Yes, I can now.
Yeah.
Okay, good deal. Aaron, I've got a question for you. I think if you're listening, do we have to have a quorum for this work session to get started? Or can we go ahead and start without a quorum since we're not actually conducting any business? She may have stepped away. Y'all bear with me for just 1 second.
Good morning. I'm Pamela Manners, Chair of the Commission on School Accreditation. This special called work session of the Commission on School Accreditation is being held today, Tuesday, July 20th, 2021 at 10:00 a.m. via teleconference. The public is available to attend from the Senator Gray Ferris Boardroom, Central High School Building, 359 Northwest Street, Jackson, Mississippi, or via the MDE YouTube channel. Minutes of this meeting will be recorded. As I call the names of the commission members, please state the location of your presence for this meeting. Kelly Barfield. Dr. Lundy Brantley.
Present. I'm at the Shelby County School District office.
Lori Brechtel.
Present. I'm in Brandon, Mississippi.
Dr. Carla Evers. Grant Dickinson.
Present. I am at the Pass Christian School District Central Office.
All right, thank you. Grant Dickinson. Reginald Goins. Jefferson Hughes. And I'm Pam Manners, and I'm in Biloxi. Dr. Valencia Martin. Aisha Maxwell. Brett Robinson.
Present, Clinton High School.
Brad Stevens. Jan Vaughn.
Present, I'm currently in Biloxi.
Sarah Wansley.
Present, I'm in Ellisville, Mississippi.
And Ingrid Williams. All right.
Can we go back? Mr. Dickinson, are you on? We saw where he signed on, but we're not seeing or hearing from him right now.
Okay.
So that means we have 7 on. So I don't think we have a quorum, but that's okay. We'll keep going.
Okay. A quorum is not present for the purpose of conducting this meeting, but we have been advised that we do not need a quorum for the training meeting. This meeting is called to order at 10:07 a.m. Commission members, you have received a copy of the agenda. Please note this is a special called work session, and therefore the only business that can be transacted is that which has been specified in the call of this meeting. At this time, I will entertain a motion for approval of the agenda. Please identify yourself for the record.
Carla Evers. I move approval of the agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Evers. May I have a second?
Pam, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, you don't have quorum to take any action, so you can just proceed without the adoption of the agenda.
Okay, good, thank you.
And I don't know if you guys, I literally just got on. This is Aisha Maxwell in Olive Branch, Mississippi.
Okay, well then we do have quorum, so
We
you
do
can go
have-
ahead.
Okay,
You can
all
go
right.
ahead and take a motion in a second.
I have
I apologize.
a motion from Dr. Evers, and may I have a second, please? To
A
adopt the
second,
agenda?
Lundy Brantley.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. At this time, I'll turn the work session over to Dr. Malone.
Thank you. Today's work session is going to be very informal. I'm going to start though first by welcoming our new members. We had a couple of new members that were appointed in June, and then a couple of new members that were appointed in July. So that's really kind of why we're having this work session. We have so many new names and faces, and many of you were appointed during COVID. And so you haven't really had a chance to have this training that we have been needing to have for a while. And so I will, if y'all don't mind, I'm just going to go through the list of the ones of you who are new in the last month or two. And if you don't mind, just introduce yourself, tell everybody who you are, what you do, and then I'll move on into the other part of the agenda. So first, last month, we had Dr. Carla Evers that was appointed. So Dr. Evers, if you don't mind, let me unshare my screen for a minute so that everybody can see you well. Hold on. There we go.
Good morning, everyone. As she said, my name is Carla Evers. I have the pleasure of serving as superintendent for the boys and girls of the Pass Christian Public School District in Pass Christian, Mississippi. This is my 30th year in education. I've served in a myriad of roles, and I have worked both in Alabama and Mississippi, with the majority of my work being here in our great state.
Thank you. Dr. Brantley.
Yes, Lundy Brantley. I'm entering my 5th year as superintendent in the Shelby County School District. Previous to that, I was superintendent for 2 years in Union Public School District. I'm really excited about being on the commission. I'm very humbled by the appointment. So looking forward to working with everybody on here. And as I end all my stuff, I would say go Rockets.
So Dr. Brantley was actually appointed last week at the state board meeting last week. And so he and two others had very short notice about this meeting. So we appreciate their being able to jump on and do this training with us with this short notice.
Absolutely.
So the next one that was appointed last week was Sarah Wansley. So Ms. Wansley, if you would, we'll just let you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Sarah Wansley. I teach at South Jones High School in Ellisville, Mississippi. I am starting my 21st year. I just finished my specialist degree last year in education leadership, and I'm working on my doctorate right now.
Oh, bless you. Let's see, Mr. Dickinson. Did he ever join back on? No. Mr. Dickinson is from Ocean Springs School District, Special Education Director. We're going to talk about the makeup of the commission as part of this in just a few minutes. And then also this past week, we had Mr. Reginald Goins, who was appointed. He was unable to be with us today, and he is a teacher up in Tate County. I want to say he's maybe a high school math teacher. And so he was appointed to fill an unexpired position. We had a commission member that stepped off the commission because they moved out of state. So did I miss anybody that was appointed last month or this month? I think that was everybody. All right, good deal. Let me go back to sharing my screen. Let's see. All right, here we go. All right, so if it is that you can't see or can't hear me, just give me a nod or thumbs up or something or wave, and I'll try to change. So, and feel free to interrupt me at any time. What we're going to do today is talk about I'm going to talk the first half, and then Alan Burra is going to join us for the second half of the presentation. He is the Executive Director of the Office of District and School Performance. We start all of our presentations here at MDE with the vision and the mission of the Department of Education. And our vision is to create a world-class educational system that gives students knowledge and skills to be successful in college and the workforce and to flourish as parents and citizens. Our mission is to provide leadership through the development of policy and accountability systems so that all students are prepared to compete in the global community. Our state board has set forth 6 goals to help us reach our vision and mission, and those 6 goals are here on your slide. I'm not going to go through each one of them, but most of the work we do somehow or another touches on all 6 of these goals. Today we're going to talk about the commission, who you are, what you do, your role. We're going to talk about the Office of Accreditation, which I serve as the Executive Director of, and what we do in our office. Then we're going to talk about, we're going to really get into the weeds of the accreditation policies and the process standards, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Burra to talk about the Mississippi Statewide Accountability System. So there is a document that I have forwarded to you guys probably several times. It's posted on our website. I don't know if you can see me in the screen or not. No, it's not doing a very good job of letting me show it to you. But anyway, the Mississippi Public School Accountability Standard is the document that we in our office oversee. And that document is basically divided into different parts, and that's the policies, and then the process standards, and then the statewide accountability system. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. So first, let's talk about you guys as the commission members. There are 15 commission members. The commission is set forth in state statute, and the commission is made up of 2 teachers, 2 principals, 1 administrator with expertise in special education. Now, that is something that's new. State statute changed this past year to ensure that we have 1 person on the commission that has the expertise in special education. One superintendent from a separate school district, one superintendent from a county or other school district, a local board member from a separate school district, a local board member from a county or other school district, and then 6 of you are what we call lay people or non-educators. You're not actively engaged in the education profession. The commission is also composed, the membership is supposed to be representative of 3 from each of the 4 congressional districts and 3 members from the state at large. That's also something that's new that came out this last legislative session. Originally, we had 5 congressional districts from an old map from years ago from when the commission was first established, and we had 3 from each of those congressional districts. So this past year has been a little bit of a challenge trying to reconfigure and figure out who was in what district and who's now in another district, even though they haven't moved, with the districts being realigned based on the statute changing. And so that's why we have different folks from across the state to make sure that everyone is represented from the congressional districts. You guys were all appointed by the State Board of Education based on the recommendation from the State Superintendent of Education. The purpose and your duty is to continuously review the standards of accreditation and the enforcement of these accreditation standards and to make recommendations to the State Board. In most cases, there are a couple of cases where the decision of the commission is final on a couple of things, and those are outlined in the policies and in the standards. But most everything that you guys do as a commission is make a recommendation to the State Board. Our office, the Office of Accreditation, we are the regulatory office within the agency, and our primary responsibility is to administer the accountability system to both the public schools and the non-public schools. But the non-public schools, you guys as the commission, you guys don't have anything to do with those. Those are governed directly under the State Board. But our office does oversee the accreditation process for the non-public schools that seek our accreditation. The accreditation standards that are located in this CQ document, they are all based somewhere either in federal law, state laws, or State Board of Education policies. Some of them are process standards alone, but most of them are based on one of those 3 things, either federal, state law, or State Board policy. One of the things that we do is that we conduct audits of school districts. Those audits come in different forms. That we have what we call a comprehensive on-site audit, and that's when our office, as well as other program offices throughout the agency, we go into the school district's own site and we monitor all 32 process standards. So, for example, the Office of Special Education, they'll go in and monitor SPED. Office of Federal Programs, they'll go in and audit federal programs. CTE will go in and monitor CTE, et cetera. We also have investigative unannounced audits. So some of the comprehensive audits are announced. We used to have the school districts on a cyclical auditing process, but legislatively our funds have kind of diminished, and we haven't done a lot of those announced audits lately. The investigative audits are unannounced in the fact that we show up in the school district, they don't know we're coming, and we begin an on-site investigative audit. Now, those investigative audits are usually prompted either by complaints that we have received from either within the district or within the community, or from something that some of the other program offices may have found in records that have been submitted to the agency. There's lots of reasons that could cause us to do an investigative audit. There's also test security audits, and those audits are led by the Office of Student Assessment. That is when they go in and they go either, it's usually right before or during or right after state testing season to make sure that the districts are complying with the test security plan. All right, so the state board acting through the commission, that's you guys, are required to establish and implement a process for accountability. And that's really what all this is about, is keeping the school districts accountable. In the fall of every year, we assign, or we come to you guys and ask you, we bring to you a recommendation to assign the annual accreditation status of all the public schools. And that's, like I said, by statute, we have to do it in the fall. It's usually in October. Sometimes it's been in December, but it fluctuates just a little bit, but that is something that we do every fall. Just know that reporting false information is a violation of Policy 2.1, and it can result in the immediate downgrade of a district's accreditation status. So even though we bring things to you guys in the fall, we bring all the school districts to you in the fall, there are times throughout the school year that we may bring to you either a request to do an immediate downgrade or an immediate upgrade of a school district accreditation status, depending on what that is. And that's what we're going to get into a little bit more detail about today. It's when we come to you in the middle of the school year and ask for you to either downgrade or upgrade a school district's accreditation status. The process standards are what we gauge that on, and it is their compliance or their degree of compliance to the process standards. There are some exceptions. And again, the exceptions are when we can bring them to you in the middle of the year to be downgraded. So if we bring to you a request for a district to be accredited, that means that they have complied 100% with all of the accreditation standards, all 32 process standards. If they are non-compliant in just one, it doesn't matter what that one is, but if they are non-compliant in one or more, then we bring to you a request to downgrade them to probation. If there is a severe noncompliance, and I'll explain in more detail what that looks like, then we can ask that you actually withdraw a school district accreditation status, or if a district has not been complying with their corrective action plan, then we can ask that you withdraw a school district accreditation status. So if a school district is put on probation or have their accreditation withdrawn, after you guys assign that status, then we send out a notice to the district to explain to the district what you guys have voted on, and we ask that they submit a corrective action plan. That corrective action plan is due to us within 45 days. It has to be approved by their local board to explain what all they're going to do and how they're going to do it, how they're going to know that they've done it correctly, to fix the things that they are still showing as being non-compliant. And then we don't bring those corrective action plans back to you guys. We take those straight to the state board and ask the state board to approve those. Okay, so we don't, like I said before, we leave the accreditation status in place all year unless there are certain circumstances. The accreditation standards that would cause us to immediately put someone on probation are listed on these next couple of slides. That's Accreditation Policy 2.1, which deals with reporting false information. Standards 1 all deal with board governance. If the board is not governing properly, they're not following their policies, they're interfering with day-to-day operations of the district. Standards 4 and 5 all deal with financial issues. So if they are having financial issues, they're not following the financial standards. Standard 14 deals with graduation requirements. If we find out that they have been letting students graduate without meeting the graduation requirements, that's what we consider severe. Standard 16, if they're not following proper protocol with the administration of the statewide assessment system, meaning test security issues. Any of the standard 17s deal with federal regulations. So if they're non-compliant with any of the federal programs, such as, federal programs, child nutrition, special education, child nutrition, what are some of the other ones? Career and technical, I know there's more. Kindergarten, those are all federal. Those have pretty strong sanctions. Standards 29 through 31 deal with a safe and secure climate. So whether that's transportation, having a safety plan, they're building facilities. If we have reason to believe that they are not in a safe environment, then we can bring those to you. And I'm seeing a typo on the slide. I've got some things repeated. I'm not sure why. So we can also come to you and ask for you to withdraw a district accreditation. It's really the same standards that I just outlined for probation. It's just that the severity of them would be more of an issue. All right, so what do we do if there is any type of a controversy, meaning if the district disagrees with it? So all controversies involving accreditation status of school districts are initially heard by duly authorized representatives of the commission, unless a recommendation is made regarding a state of an emergency. And so we're going to talk today, too, about what does the state of an emergency look like? What is y'all's role if we were to come to you and ask for you to declare a state of an emergency in a school district? This is just a slide about what happens if school districts reconfigure or combine, because in some cases in legislation, there have been school districts that have merged. And in a nutshell, this is just basically saying that if a district reconfigures or consolidates with another district, if they have issues on record, citations on record, they still have to clean those citations up. They don't just get a free pass because they've consolidated with another district. I've already talked to you about the corrective action plan and what that looks like and how they have to do that. If the district fails to do what's in a corrective action plan, then we can bring that to you and ask that you withdraw their accreditation. If before requesting approval from the board to withdraw an accreditation of a district, the commission has to conduct a hearing to allow the officials of the districts that are affected to present any evidence or any reason why they believe that their accreditation should not be withdrawn. Upon the results of that hearing, upon the consideration of the transcribed record and recommendations of the commission's representative, the commission shall meet and make a decision and notify all parties in writing by certified mail within 45 days of the conclusion of the hearing, and after consideration of the results of the hearing, the commission is authorized with the approval of the board to withdraw the accreditation of the district and may issue a request to the governor to request a state of an emergency. If a decision is not made to withdraw the accreditation status of the district, then the district can establish a new timeline in their corrective action plan to fix the things that they need to fix to become in compliance. If a state of an emergency has been declared, then there are processes where we have to make a public notice of that state of an emergency. This is also just in policy that if the districts have to give us access to their records if a withdrawal of accreditation occurs. Reinstatement of accredited status, when we reinstate based on the recommendation of our office or the state superintendent, superintendent and school board president of the school district whose accreditation has been withdrawn can file a petition with the commission for reinstatement of the accreditation to be effective either on January or July 1. The commission shall require all school districts that petition for reinstatement of accreditation to appear before the commission to furnish any evidence to the commission that the district is compliant with their accreditation status before we reinstate them. Okay, so there are some conditions in which we can ask the governor to declare a state of an emergency. All right, so withdrawal of accreditation hearing and subsequent state of an emergency. So if we withdraw an accreditation of the district, the commission shall conduct a hearing to determine whether a school district's accreditation should be withdrawn based on failure to comply with their corrective action plan that they have been under, or violations of accreditation standards that may require immediate action. And those are the ones that I went through with you earlier that we believe may be severe. And in that case, the commission can then ask the board to declare a state of an emergency, and then the board has the authority to ask the governor to request to declare a state of an emergency. All right, so the Office of Accreditation presents to the commission the supporting evidence to support that we believe there is an existence of an extreme emergency situation in a school district that jeopardizes the safety, security, and educational interests of the children, and the belief that the emergency situation is related to serious violations or either one or more violations of the accreditation standards or state and federal law. And if at the hearing, the commission allows the Office of Accreditation 40 minutes to present this evidence. Following the Office of Accreditation's presentation, the district then has 40 minutes to come behind the MDE's Office of Accreditation, and they have the same 40 minutes. After both the commission and the district have made their presentations, then the attorney for the MDE and the attorney for the district are allowed 10 minutes to present to you any closing arguments that they may have. Then after both parties have their 40-minute presentation and the attorneys have their 10-minute closing arguments, the commission can ask questions if they choose of either party, and then you guys can either accept the recommendation of the MDE to say that yes, you believe an extreme emergency exists and that you want it to go to the board for their consideration, or you can reject the recommendation of the MDE. If you guys were to reject the recommendation of the MDE, then that is where it ends. It does not go to the state board. If it goes to the board, and the board then determines that they believe a extreme emergency exists and a request is made to the governor, then we do put in there a timeline or an expiration date for which the governor either has to sign it or it will automatically be rescinded. There is another avenue in which the MDE can take over a school district, and that is if the school district is what we call persistently failing. If it is an F district for 2 consecutive years, and if that's the case, then it's not something that the commission has to consider. There's no action on the commission. That is handled directly by the state board. The schools at risk is what we refer to it when there are more than 50% of the schools in a school district are failing. Those are what we call schools at risk. And again, the commission doesn't have to consider any of that. SBE makes those recommendations to the governor. We also have what is called the Achievement School District. So in the alternative, the state board may consider putting a school district in what we call the achievement school district. If they're one of those failing districts or a district school at risk, then they can put those schools in the achievement school district, which is governed by the MDE. The achievement school, if a school or district is placed in the achievement school district, then they have, let's see, hold on. Oh, no, I've already said that, hold on. Okay, somewhere there's a slide in there that says what they have to do to come out from underneath the achievement school district, but maybe I'll get to that one in a minute. So what happens if the commission withdraws a school district accreditation? The way I like to explain this is where the students, unfortunately, are penalized. In state statute, if school district accreditation status is withdrawn, then the schools within the district are limited to the participation in no more than 50% of the regular season of any interscholastic activity, which includes the regional division and district playoff games. So in other words, that's where the sports become impacted, and that's really where we get the community's attention when we start impacting athletics and extracurricular activities. And then it goes on to explain, that cheerleading, dance, speech, there are other things than just football, basketball, that are impacted. And I sent you guys all these slides that you can read through the details. All right, so policy 3, I'm not going to get into all the details of it as I'm walking through the policies. Policy 3 is where Alan is going to explain the Mississippi statewide assessment system and the accountability system, and that is where the districts and schools are assigned the A through F grades, and that's a whole nother process that he'll get into, but it is part of the accreditation policies. So policy 4, that basically just says that there are some exemptions to some of the process standards. Some of it is in state law, where if a school or a district is an A or an A, and in some cases it's an A or a B, then they are exempt from some of the process standards. In some cases, it's the district, and in some cases, it's the school. So that just basically says that we monitor. So that's our policy 5 that says we have to do the monitoring. I've already explained to you that we do on-site evaluations. When we do an on-site evaluation, unless we are asking for some immediate action, then we give the district 45 days to respond in writing if they want to, if they believe that we are in error and that they have any type of documentation to support that we were in error. They have 45 days to get that documentation to us before it officially goes on their record. Our office is the office that takes all we're the main point of contact, I guess you could say, for complaints. So our phone rings a lot with, sometimes it's teachers, sometimes it's parents, sometimes it's community members, and so we are the intake point for all those complaints. So when we get those complaints, we tell them that while we'll listen to them on the phone, we need their complaint in writing, because in order for it to be considered official, we need their contact information in case we have more questions, need to follow up with them. But what we don't do is provide details on the status of a complaint or an investigation. So if someone calls and wants to lodge a complaint about something, we get the information, but we don't always, we can't tell them where we are in the investigation process, because that a lot of times impedes with the investigation itself, them knowing where we are with that. There are certain areas in which the commission, you and the MDE have authority. There are certain areas which you don't have authority, or that we as MDE don't have authority. Things that fall under the Public Records Act, like if we get a complaint that a district has not provided certain information that someone has asked for, then we refer those callers or those individuals to the Mississippi Ethics Commission. If it is a complaint that someone believes that their civil rights have been violated, we refer them to the Office of Civil Rights. If someone believes that a school district is violating the Open Meetings Act, that also falls under the Mississippi Ethics Commission. So while we get lots of complaints, they don't all fall under our purview in terms of our authority to be able to investigate or take any action on. As I said before, if we get a complaint from a district or from somebody that does fall under our purview, then we notify the district and we notify them that we have received a complaint, and we give them 45 days to respond to the allegations of that complaint. And it depends on what their response is as to what next steps we may take. In some cases, districts may admit or confess to something that they've done, and we then have to put them on probation. In some cases, it's whoever's doing the complaining doesn't have all the facts, and the district has given us additional information that we closed the case, or we may refer it to another office for additional investigation. You as the commission, as well as the state board and the state superintendent, all of you guys have the authority as a body, not as individuals, to call for an on-site investigation of a school district at any time. All controversies involving the accreditation of schools or school districts are initially heard by a duly authorized representative of the commission in accordance with that statute. A school board can request a hearing within 10 days when we give them their notification of their recommended status. Then they have 10 days to ask for a hearing if they want a hearing, but that does not apply if we are requesting a state of an emergency. If they do request a hearing, then we have a hearing officer that comes and does that hearing for us. We set the time and the place and the date for the hearing, and we notify all the parties. I won't go into all those details, but feel free to read through all those. At least 14 days prior to the hearing, the parties represented by counsel and producing witnesses have to provide us with a list of names and addresses and phone numbers of those individuals, as well as copies of exhibits. In a hearing, the commission's representative is not bound by common law or statutory rules. It's a hearing. It's not like what am I trying to say? It's not a court. It's kind of like a court. It's not a court. And our attorneys are on the line, so they know to jump in and stop me if I say something wrong. Let's see. All right, so 6.3, again, that all deals with the hearing and the timelines. I'll let you guys read through that because I know we've got Mr. Burrow lined up to go with us next, so I'm trying to get through my part so I could turn it over to him. The school board can appeal to the state board by filing a written notice within 15 days of the decision of the commission. The notice of appeal should state the particularity of the matters in which the opinion of the school district has been overlooked or mistakenly conceived in the decision of the commission. Then that's some more steps in the process. Okay, so that ends my part. Erin, did you want to say something?
Yeah.
Because I want to open the floor to questions before I pass it over to Alan.
Yeah, so real quickly, for the new commission members, especially who've never been through any of these accreditation status changes, the biggest distinction is between the state of an emergency type hearing and if there's a hearing requested based on just a change in accreditation status, either a immediate downgrade recommendation of probation or an immediate withdrawal of accreditation. Those that are dealing with the immediate downgrade or withdrawal, those hearings are more adversarial. And although Joanne said it's not a court of law, those are more structured like a court of law. There are witnesses, there's evidence exchange, it's a full-blown hearing, but the commission actually doesn't sit in on that hearing. So you have duly authorized representatives. Those are hearing officers that are available from the Office of the Attorney General. They sit in sort of in the judge role. They listen to all of the evidence, and then they ultimately provide a written recommendation to the commission. And then the commission rules on that ultimately, and that's how the process goes, but it's transcribed. So you guys aren't hearing and sitting in on however long that type of hearing takes place. And then when it gets to the board level, the appeal process, the state board, depending on what the commission rules on, if there's an appeal to the state board, there's also kind of on the record. The difference with the state and emergency is you guys are much more involved in that process. You are there listening to the 40 minutes by the Office of Accreditation, the 40 minutes by the local school district representatives. You're asking questions, you're hearing the arguments, the short arguments from the council, and then you review everything and either reject the recommendation that MD has put before you, or you determine that an extreme emergency does exist. And you know, that's something you all would vote on. That is something that would also, you develop a resolution with whoever is serving as counsel to the commission. That's also a representative from the Office of the Attorney General. It may be me, it may be my colleague David Minton, it may be someone else from the Office of the Attorney General. But you would be developing a resolution that speaks to the findings. So as Joanne went through, she discussed how there's a determination that an extreme emergency situation exists, and it lists out based on the safety and security of the students, or there may be findings as to what's happening financially, academically, if there's violation of standards, if there's violation of state law, if there's violation of federal law. Your resolution may include all of it, it may include none of it, in the event you make those findings. So I just wanted to make sure you all are aware that there's a distinction between those two different type of hearing processes when accreditation process standards are in controversy. I think, Joanne, you covered everything else, but if you have any questions, I've been through all of the processes on more than one occasion, so I can answer questions if you have them. It's a lot of information to take in right now, so.
Yeah, so before we let Alan start, does anybody have any questions on what we've been through so far? Because we're going to really shift gears into his part of the presentation. I like to explain his part versus my part as the accreditation status is really how are the grown-ups doing? Are the grown-ups doing what they're supposed to do? And then on Alan's part, it's kind of like how are the students doing in terms of how are the students performing? And that's where we get the A through F calculations. But like I said, before we move on, I want to make sure there's no questions on what we've covered so far. And do we need to take a 5-minute break, or can we just keep rolling? everybody okay to keep rolling? Okay, Alan, do you want me to, I guess I'll need to advance your slides. You're muted, Alan.
All right, let me see if I can control it. Did it go to the next slide? Am I advancing it for everybody? Joanne? Okay, good. All right, so what I want to get across to everyone is exactly how the accountability system works and the responsibility of the commission in regards to the accountability system. I'm sure as Joanne has communicated that the performance classifications and the accountability system are outlined in Accreditation, and we have a long set of business rules that are in the accreditation process standards that everybody, I'm sure, is familiar with how to get to. And the goal is to make sure that any nuances or questions that may come up regarding accountability and how these measures occur are outlined in business rules. And if they're not, then we need to clarify that and make changes and edits and we do usually on an annual basis. Now, all of those changes and edits that may occur to the accountability system have to come through the Commission on School Accreditation, so that would be you, before it goes to, or a recommendation is made to the state board. So I want to first talk about big picture when it comes to accountability. What is it really we're trying to accomplish? And I kind of broke that down into 3 areas, which will be on the next 3 slides. So first of all, the statewide accountability system works to establish minimum standards for public schools and districts. So some guidelines, some basic rules of the road to try to push student performance better or forward, and to keep performance in line with expectations. There are many things that schools and districts do well that the accountability system does not attempt to measure or capture. That's always intentional, and something that can always be discussed. But just want to point out that we're not capturing everything that schools and districts do, but establishing minimum standards for student performance. The accountability system serves in a reporting capacity. So we have state and federal regulations that require certain reporting levels, and that's the responsibility. Certainly one of the responsibilities of my office is to ensure that we meet those reporting requirements. And then accountability works to get results. So we know that accountability systems drive behavior in schools and districts, and ultimately drive student performance. And we can see that whenever we kind of take a step back and do these checks to see how Mississippi is performing relative to other states, and to see how accountability rules and regulations do change behaviors in schools and districts, which I'll kind of go over in the next few slides. So as you probably know, we had some wonderful results on the NAEP 2019 NAEP exams. Mississippi showed some of the best progress in the nation. Number 1 in increase in student performance in 4th grade reading and 4th grade math, 2nd in the nation in 4th grade reading, 4th grade math and 8th grade math, and 3rd in 8th grade math, and 4th in the nation in 8th grade reading. So, these are some things that we want to look for in the long term when it comes to setting accountability standards and performance expectations for our schools. How are our students in Mississippi performing relative to other states? Are we preparing our students to compete in a national workforce? So again, just proficiency gains on the NAEP assessment from 2009 to 2019 in grade 4 reading and math and grade 8 reading and math. Mississippi was the only state with an increase in 4th grade reading in the 2019 NAEP results. Mississippi was one of only 9 states with a score increase in grade 4 math in 2019 NAEP results. In 8th grade math, Mississippi was one of only 3 states with an increase in 8th grade math results on NAEP And Mississippi's 8th grade reading scores held steady as many states declined on 2019 NAEP results. We also look for performance changes as our standards remain the same over several years. So as you may know, we've had the MAP assessment in place since 2016. So that's the current state assessment for ELA, math and science, and U.S. history. We have had some updates to standards. As you can see in the science results for 2019, we had a change in standards, so you can see a drop in the performance levels in 2019. But we're seeing results in ELA and math that are consistent with what our expectations would be over that time period. Of course, we have results coming out for this year that will probably look a little different because of the pandemic, but those are things that we expect for sure. Advanced placement, acceleration component of the accountability system was added in our current accountability system in 2013, 2014, and you can see the increase in the participation of AP assessments and the number of students that are taking and earning college credit through AP as a result of those changes in accountability. So I started with the big picture. What are we trying to accomplish with accountability measures in the state, and how do we measure whether or not those things, those rules and actions are actually getting the results that we want? Mississippi's accountability system was established as a single A through F accountability system and approved by the State Board of Education in 2014. Anytime we make any changes to the accountability system, we want to engage our stakeholders, and we do that through the Accountability Task Force, the technical review committees, through legislature, the commission as well, and other program area staff within the agency. We have to, whenever we're making rules or regulations regarding accountability, we have to first consider what do we want to accomplish as a state, but also what do we need to do to ensure that we are meeting federal requirements, because we have a single accountability system. Some states have a separate federal accountability system and then a state accountability system. We have one that that meets all requirements in Mississippi. So this slide just kind of points to what is the federal government interested in regards to our accountability system. And their focus is to ensure that we are identifying schools for supports. So they have comprehensive support and improvement schools, targeted support and intervention schools, and then additional targeted support and intervention schools. Those are the identifications that the federal government are looking for, and to ensure that our accountability system provides for those identifications. They're interested in ensuring that those funds are going to the students that are in most need within the state. So our accountability system does work to identify those federal identifications each year, as well as our other performance or summative, I would call it a summative rating. We use the A through F rating that is provided for in state statute. So sometimes we'll talk about accountability, and some of those things will be addressed specifically in federal statute and others in state statute. But again, it's one unified system that complies with both legislative entities. So again, an A through F system. This was the bill that initiated the current system that we have now and did away with the prior system. So you'll see it refers to an A through F system and no longer using the old designations. There were some old designations of STAR, high performing, successful, low performing, or at risk of failing. That was replaced with the A through F indicator for schools and districts. There was a discontinuation of a statistical rating called QDI that was hard for schools and districts and the public to interpret. We had some different graduation measures that were also in place prior to the existing system that tended to be a bit confusing. We had a 4-year graduation rate. We had a high school completion index, or the HSCI, that considered extended year graduation, other types of graduation, such as other types of completion other than a regular traditional high school diploma, such as a GED. So, and then another thing to consider is that when we establish standards, state statute requires that when 75% of students become proficient, or when 65% of schools earn a B or higher grade, then we are charged by state law to reestablish those standards. So I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. But the intent is to establish standards and to hold those standards until we reach a certain level of student performance, and then up the measure of performance at that point. So, okay, I'll go back to big picture here. Really, what does the accountability system attempt to measure? Again, I said it doesn't attempt to measure everything that schools and districts are doing, but these are the things in general that it's attempting to measure, and that is proficiency or performance on state assessments. Did students meet expectations? So it could be state assessments, it could be ACT, other standardized measures of student performance. Are students growing from one year to the next? Are they meeting their growth expectation? Are they increasing in their performance in order to reach a minimum standard, which for us is proficiency? Are all students participating as they should in the assessment? So participation is included, and participation is also required in federal statute. A 95% participation rate or higher is expected for schools and districts. And graduation rates. Did the student graduate with a traditional high school diploma and graduate on time, which is within 4 years of entering the 9th grade? So these are the assessments that we're looking at. For subject area assessments, we measure reading, language arts, and math in grade level 3 through 8. High school intercourse assessments in English 2 and Algebra 1. And then we have alternate assessments in 3 through 8 in high school for students with an SED status, significantly cognitive disability status. And then one thing to point out is that we measure proficiency on science and U.S. history. So grades 5 and 8, science is only administered in grades 5 and 8, so not 3 through 8 every year, but 5 and 8. Biology and U.S. history in high school. We don't measure growth on those because they're not given every year, but we measure proficiency on those. Okay, so when we talk about growth, there's many different ways of measuring growth, and several accountability systems within the nation do it different ways. We use this, what some call an indexing system. So this is a very easy to understand way of measuring growth for students and easy to interpret for the public. So basically what we're looking at is you'll see in the bottom of this table, there are 5 colors, or 5, these align to the 5 performance levels of the assessment. So level 4 is proficient and level 5 is an advanced. We are striving to get all students to level 4 or level 5. Level 4 is proficient. And then we have increments of growth along that way until a student reaches a proficient level. So then you'll see that these performance levels on the assessments are divided up to measure those increments as a student grows across the proficiency levels. So levels 1, 2, and 3 are split in half. So you have a 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, 3A, 3B. And the intent there is, again, to have a more sensitive measurement of growth as a student progresses. But then once the student reaches proficiency, and they're at level 4. Level 4 is obviously not split in half. A student can go from 4 to 5. And then you see these arrows provide some samples of what growth may look like across those levels. So a student that increases across a half point of a performance level, so for example, a 1A to 1B gets 1 point for growth. A student that goes from one performance level to another, from a 1A to a 2A, they get 1 point for growth. If a student exceeds the growth expectation for 1 year, so they skip from a level 1 all the way to a level 3, there's a added weighting for the student, so they get a 1.25 for growth in the points for the accountability system. Also, students that go from any level to the advanced level, so level 5, also get an added weight of 1.25. Another thing that's important to point out here is that a student that maintains proficiency also counts for growth. So the emphasis is ensuring that students are moving towards proficient. But then once the student has reached proficiency, the expectation is that they just at least maintain proficiency from one year to the next, that they not regress from that proficient level. Okay, so how do we take all of these different measures of performance and create a score for a school or a district? This table attempts to divide all of these different measures of accountability into their point weighting in the accountability model. So here you'll see that proficiency in reading counts 95 points. Proficiency in math is 95 points. Growth for all students in reading, growth for all students in math, and growth below 25 for reading and growth below 25 in math all have 95 points. When we talk about growth of all students, this measures whether or not students are progressing according to the table we just talked about across all students in that school and district in that subject area. Now, when we talk about the lowest 25, we're talking about the students that's the lowest 25 percentile of students that performed on assessments in the prior year. So these are your lowest performing students. And so this adds additional emphasis or additional weighting on those students. And the intent there is to ensure that schools and districts are identifying those students that most need or at most risk of falling behind and ensuring that those students are progressing from one year to the next. So those students that are in the lowest performing group of students by subject and grade, they count here in the lowest growth of the lowest 25%, but they also are included in the growth of all students. So those students have extra weighting on them to ensure that schools and districts are working to progress those students forward. Again, in science, we have 95 points. And then there's an English language progress component that's fairly new to accountability. It was required by ESSA, by the federal government a couple of years back. And this measures English learners, so students who are learning English not as their primary language, and how are they progressing from one year to the next. And this table applies to elementary and middle schools. So you won't see a graduation rate, for example, in this table. So let's talk about schools that do include 12th grade, so our high schools and also our districts. They have additional components in here. The same measures for reading and math that I just discussed. Also, we add U.S. history along with science for other subjects. And then you'll see graduation rate is in here as well. And graduation rate, as you'll notice in the chart, is heavily weighted. So it's got 190 points assigned to that. And that is intentional and something that was required by the federal government in approving our accountability system. Acceleration, we're looking at, I'll go over that in more detail in the next couple of slides, but courses that advance students above or past post-secondary levels, so industry certifications, AP exams, college credit, that sort of thing. College and career readiness, we're looking at ACT performance or ACT work keys for students that choose to take ACT work keys and how they score on that. And then again, English language progress, so students that are English learners and how are they progressing from one year to the next. All right, so for both of those tables, we add up all of those points that I just discussed to get a composite score for the school and or district. And this is the table that outlines the grade cuts for each of those groups. So whenever grade cuts are established, we're looking at a comparable group, and then we're creating a distribution for grades. You may have in the past heard of like a bell curve. We're looking at a similar type of distribution when we establish cuts. and we're doing it for similar groups. So that's why we have one set of cuts for districts, one for elementary, middle schools, and one for high schools, which are also known as 1,000-point schools. And these are the cuts that were established several years back. These cuts do not change on an annual basis. They change when there's a significant interruption or change or edit to the accountability system that may cause a disruption to that distribution for A through F. They will also change, again, as I mentioned earlier, as required by state statute, when so many schools reach a certain level and we have to reestablish cuts. But the intent here is to establish A through F grade cuts for each of these groups, and then let that distribution, as we would hope, move forward. So you'd have fewer in the D and F range and more in the A, B, and C range. And that's what we see if we look back. So from 2016 to 2019, how did that distribution change for schools that were rated C or higher? As Dr. Malone has probably mentioned earlier, one of our board goals is that all schools are performing at C or higher. So this is kind of how that looks over time and how more schools and districts are moving up that A through F distribution. Okay, let me touch a little bit more on acceleration. As I mentioned earlier, I would come back to. So again, acceleration has two points of measurement in it. One is participation and the other one is performance. And we're looking at students, all students that are enrolled in the 11th and 12th grade. Are they participating in accelerated courses and are they meeting the expectation for those courses? We also include 9th and 10th graders if they participate in an accelerated course and are successful in the course. They are included in the point calculation. But again, we're looking at advanced courses that award college credits, industry certification, dual enrollment. And so half of the points are assigned to participation. So what percentage of those students are participating in accelerated courses, and then half of the points go to whether or not those students are successful in those accelerated courses. And then in the college and career readiness component, just to touch more on that, again, that looks at the regular ACT assessment and whether or not students are meeting ACT established benchmarks for English or reading, whether they're meeting the benchmark in math. They can get a half a point for each of those, or this is a new addition to the accountability system that will be implemented in the upcoming academic year, whether or not students meet a performance expectation on ACT work keys. And the decision here was that if a student meets a ACT work keys silver credential along with a career pathway or industry certification, that would be an equivalent to meeting the ACT benchmarks. Or if a student makes a work keys gold or platinum credential on ACT work keys, they would also get the point for the college and career readiness in the accountability system. And then moving forward, as I mentioned initially, any changes to the accountability system have to come through the Commission on School Accreditation. But we first start with, as you quite might imagine, feedback from the public, feedback from schools and districts. We get comments on, this is working, this isn't working. We may see, for example, that a business rule in accountability isn't working like we want to, or it's maybe having some unintended consequences. One of those that happened a couple of years back was participation in AP courses were going down as participation in dual enrollment courses were going up. And one of those reasons is that the passing rate on dual credit courses was so much higher than AP courses that we started to see schools shift away from AP and more dual enrollment. So there were some changes that were discussed in how we could adjust the rules to prevent that moving away from advanced placement courses. Those are things that we have to sometimes take a step back and look at accountability and understand how these business rules are working in schools and districts, and also taking that feedback from schools and districts and the public to ensure that we are making annual adjustments to the accountability system as necessary in order to make sure that we're achieving our goals. And then those discussions go through the accountability task force, which is a group of stakeholders. So administrators, assistant superintendents, principals, teachers. It's a group of about 25 that meet on a monthly or bi-monthly basis to provide feedback to the department on some of these issues that we want to consider. And then the department then will make a recommendation to the Commission on School Accreditation if there's a necessary change. The Commission on School Accreditation will review the issue and consider making a recommendation to the State Board of Education. The Commission can consider an issue and make a recommendation or not. And then the State Board of Education ultimately has the decision on that. So that is my quick overview of accountability and how accountability system works. I hope that was not too down in the weeds, but also if you have any questions, I'd be glad to go back and discuss that for you.
Alan.
What's that?
I was just asking if anybody had any questions for you. I'm going to leave that slide up because I want to comment about that particular process and how it applies to my side of the process too, and the revisions to the accreditation standards. So I'm glad you ended on that slide. But before I make those comments, I want to make sure that nobody has any questions for Alan. All right, hearing none. So this slide that Alan has up here shows the process for the review and improvement of the statewide accountability system. It's a very similar process for the accreditation standards. So when one of the program offices or here at MDE or even our office feel that there is a need to make a revision to any of the accreditation standards, sometimes we have to make revisions based on changes in state statute. Then we bring those proposed revisions to you, the commission, as a request to accept those changes and to take those proposed changes to the state board for them to approve us to then begin the APA process. So that is a process that, like I said, when he had this slide up there, I thought I probably need to elaborate a little bit on that. Whenever we make any changes to the accountability standards, whether it's the accountability standards or the business rules of the statewide accountability system, we then have to take them out for public feedback, what we call the APA process. So after the board approves that we begin that process, then we have to file something with the Secretary of State's office and open that comment period up to the public. And we take comments from the public, whether that's parents, whether it's stakeholders, teachers, administrators, it's anybody. Then once that comment period closes, we review those comments and that feedback that we get from the public to then determine whether we are going to ask the state board to proceed with our original recommendation or whether or not we need to make some additional edits and revisions based on the feedback that we have gotten. And we have seen that go many different ways. There are times when we get no public feedback, there are times when we get a little bit, and there are times when we get a lot of public feedback. And there are times when we have had to say, okay, you know what, we thought this was a good idea. Based on public feedback, maybe it wasn't. And we have to go back to the board and say, you know, based on the comments that we have received, we are going to change things up and bring to you some additional revised recommendations. And then sometimes it has to go back out for public comment again. But I will say this, it doesn't come back to the commission. Once things go to the commission and you approve that we ask the state board to start the APA process, once we get all the comments in, we just take that back to the board for final approval. The commission doesn't have the authority for the final approval, the board does. Alan, Aaron, have I missed anything that we need to go over? No? All right, well, that's all that we have for you guys today. So we're a little bit early. I know we both probably talked pretty fast, but we wanted to make sure that we had plenty of time for questions if you guys had any questions. So if there aren't any questions, then I guess, Ms. Manners, we'll let you take a motion to adjourn and adjourn it.
All right, thank you very much. I would like to thank you, Dr. Malone and Alan Burrow and Aaron, for all of the work that you put into this. It was very helpful, I think, especially to all of us that are new this year to the CSA. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion, Lundy Brantley.
Thank you. And a second, please.
Second, Sarah Wansley.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. And we are adjourning at 11:22 a.m.